Hi guys, today I will show you my final setup for my Gladiator, reaching 5 million DPS and getting even tankier. I achieved this by cooking a new setup where I use a Tincture which boosts my DPS by a lot. It is basically equivalent to getting a second Ryslatha. So if you are struggling with getting one, I suggest you switch to this setup. It sucks that I have to do this, but this is what happens if I don't do it. And this is what happens if I do it. So just a reminder that after watching this video, if you enjoyed it, please subscribe, that's the most important, and leave in comments what you think or if you have any questions. The other main difference with the previous setup is that I have reached 100% spell suppression chance, and I also focused on getting the build to feel comfier to play with less buttons to be pressed, especially during bosses. So to be able to run the Tincture, you cannot spec into blood magic because the Tincture stops when your mana reaches 0. So after some testing, I decided that the best thing to do with the setup is to run life tap support. So Lacerate does not cost any mana. And thanks to 2 Elrion rings or amulets, our other skills cost barely any mana, so we can still have a very smooth gameplay when the mana burn gets too bad and the Tincture deactivates. Also, the cooldown of the Tincture isn't too bad, because our bleed duration is basically the same as the cooldown, so during bosses we barely lose any uptime of the Tincture. Keep in mind that mana leech will be very desirable still, because it counteracts the mana burn of the Tincture and allows us to run it for way longer. To save some passive points, I am using G-Well. Now to make the build easier to play, I don't use the wall banner anymore because I find it very unreliable. It's hard to keep track of your valor, and when you put it down it's quite small, so you often step out and it instantly disappears. It just does not feel good. Another point is that I have automated the endurance charge generation, so I still use Enduring Cry for the boost of regeneration from time to time, but it's really not necessary and you can just focus on positioning instead. We achieve this generation by speccing into the 100% charge duration in the passive tree, and by using a Searing Exile implicit on our body armor. Since the duration of an endurance charge is longer than this generation cooldown, we are permanently capped. Another important trick is that I have physical damage leech as life on my gloves as an Eater of Worlds implicit. The reason for this is that before we relied solely on Blood Rage to get Leech, and I noticed that in complex and long boss fights I sometimes forget to cast it, and it is also just distracting to have to remind yourself of keeping the buff up. So something that is not mandatory, but I can recommend it to you, is to swap a few gems depending on what you are doing. So for complex boss fights, I recommend going for Lacerate of Hemorrhage with Cruelty instead of Multi-Strike, but for clearing you should keep Multi-Strike, and you can also gem swap the Lacerate of Hemorrhage for a simple Lacerate. When you use Lacerate of Hemorrhage, you want to stay in Sand stance because the blood stance has no benefits basically. However, I sometimes forget to do this, as you can see in this fight, so I am taking a lot more damage. Also, this map just had a very bad affix, which is the reduced chance to block. Now for the passive tree changes, I have saved some points by respeccing all these nodes that go up to Bone to Fight, and instead I added a Cluster G-Well with these 3 passives, Iron Breaker, Master of Fundamentals and Fierce Assault, and getting some more G-Wells in here. All my G-Wells basically are this type, with physical damage over time multiplier, increased maximum life, and some resistances. I find the resistances very nice because it makes it easier to get gear with chaos resistance and spell suppression chance, which is why I am at 53% chaos resistance now. Also, I went up here to get an endurance charge, a socket, and these 2 maximum life. This didn't change. I unspec'd these 4 nodes. I also unspec'd these nodes to save some points, and I went for these instead to get the damage over the mastery, but makes us take less damage over time, which is very nice because degen is the biggest problem we can encounter with this build. Also, here we spec into Entrench to cap our super spell chance, and we have these nodes to get some mana reservation to have a better pool for the Tincture. And we locate inventory through the Anoint on our amulet. Oh, and you should keep in mind that it's better to respec your bandit's choice from Oak to either a Lyra for more elemental resistance, so it's easier to get cheaper gear, or for the additional point, because allocating one of the 6% maximum life node is giving us more life than Oak, because we have such big life prefixes now. For the rest, nothing major has changed, so I don't want to repeat myself compared to the other videos. But of course, feel free to ask any questions in the comments and I will do my best to reply. Also, please let me know if my videos have helped you, and I hope you enjoyed this more heavily edited video because it took me way longer to make. Anyway, as always, have a good one and see you in the next. Let's go, Deathless, baby!